Hi everyone, I'm Nopolo Mkunu, the founder of Blumese, and with me here is Nwabi Satsita.
Hi everyone, I'm Satsita, as Nopolo has introduced. I am the co-founder of Blumese, and
we're excited to do our first talk today, which will be on the impact of COVID-19 on mental health on the South African community. So we're just gonna introduce the topic. Basically, we'll be covering mental health in terms of depression and anxiety, as well as suicide. So we'll just start off by sharing some stats on COVID-19 in South Africa. So currently, and these are stats from yesterday, basically the latest stats that are on the South African COVID-19 website. The total cases as of today are 1.5 million, and the total cases in KZN are 331,687, which basically makes up a total of 21.7% of the South African community as a whole. And it puts us in second place, within the country, with Gauteng, which is leading in cases. And so we're just second there. And then the total deaths within KZN are 9,812 so far, with 9 new ones recorded from yesterday. And then the total recoveries in KZN that we've had are 315,185. And then in terms of active cases, we have 6,690. So it's just to give you a picture of how COVID-19 has basically impacted the South African community, but also more locally, the KZN community. So Unabisa will share some stats on mental health.
Yes. Yeah, I think Nopolo has painted a picture of how COVID-19 has impacted KZN as a province, and even more locally, the spikes in death and the incidence of cases have also increased. So we have a South African Depression Group that gives mental health support for common disorders, as Nopolo mentioned, suicide, depression, and anxiety. And they have seen a spike, an increase of almost about 65% of increase in psychological and emotional distress, and that really has, also has given some psychosocial difficulties for most of our communities, especially the vulnerable communities who do not have financial access or means to accessing adequate mental health services. And I think that's something that we wanted to explore and really delve into, just to highlight that issue that, that's something that COVID-19 has really negatively impacted our communities with.
All right. So we'll just start off with the signs and symptoms of mental health. More particularly depression. All right. So let me come back to you, my colleague.
Yes.
So maybe if we can just cover our own experiences first. What signs would you say you've had in terms of your depressive episodes?
So understanding mental health as a holistic, sense of well-being, being able to thrive and to become, just become my whole self, in terms of, being productive and all that. I feel like my depressive episodes have really impacted my own sense of well-being, in a sense, in terms of productivity, in terms of my own self-identity. You know, when I was depressed, I couldn't even understand who I was at the time, because I felt like I'm just not myself. You know, you just feel disconnected to who you are as a person, to your identity, especially because I used to be extroverted, but then I became so withdrawn and so, you know, just in like not like just unfamiliar with who I am, right? So I think that was the most, you know, red flag for me that something is going wrong in my life. And in terms of my emotions and psychological functioning, I cried a lot. You know, I was tearful, and I became suicidal. I've used to have ideas about suicide, but then it was more intense at that time, to the point that I started, you know, trying to attempt as the severity of symptoms became more apparent and more apparent as the time went by. So yeah, that was my own experience with depression and anxiety.
Okay. I like that you mentioned withdrawal, which I think is quite a big symptom of depression. Yeah. And it's also listed amongst the symptoms just in general, not just particularly from your experience.
Personal experience,
And how was yours? For me, withdrawal is a big one.
Yeah.
For me, withdrawal is a big one. I basically pull away from the social environment. I'm unable to connect the same way that I normally can to my loved ones and all other people that I interact with on a daily basis. So, and it's also, there's also a disconnection involved. You feel disconnected from yourself, basically, you know, your sense of self. And which I think is something you also mentioned. You feel like a whole new person. Like, I definitely have a whole different personality when I'm undergoing depression as compared to when I'm just myself, you know, like right now. And really it's so it really takes away so much from you as a person. You know, and for me, another big sign or experience that I go through is I lose my sense of presence. I'm unable to be, you know, to fully be present within, whether it's a conversation
or being mindful.
You know, like that sense of presence is completely lost. You know, and I think it really just robs you of, you know, going through your life the way that you would love to, you know, the way that you desire. And I also experienced that lack of productivity. You know, I'm not able to think the same way as when I'm not undergoing depression. You know, something that would take me like 30 minutes to do, when I'm depressed will take me like an hour or maybe an hour and 30 minutes to do, because my brain is just, you know, like it's not functioning in the same way. And
those are like, you know, as we said, you know, the clinical manifestations of depression varies with person to person, because as we mentioned, you also share the similar experience of, you know, social withdrawal, disconnected from self. So there are certain symptoms that we may not have mentioned, but some people can present with when they're having depression, like anhedonia, which is lack of enjoyment of the activities and the interests that you used to have, and also sometimes energy. I think we also had low energy. Mentioned low energy. Sometimes feeling like your limbs or your, you know, body parts are being heavy. You know, some people gain weight and some others, usually women, gain weight because we are emotional eaters. Sometimes we tend to be emotional eaters. Men can also be emotional eaters. And also, you know, sleeplessness, you know, sleep problems. Some people who have delayed sleep, and others would wake up in the middle of the night and can't go back to sleep. So those are the things the other symptoms or signs to look out for. And even as Unokolo has mentioned, you know, this inability to connect with your loved ones or in the way that you used to, you know, which is, I think, the most identifiable sign from your loved ones or significant others, that you are not as present with them or able to relate to them as you used to.
As you normally do.
Yes. Yeah. And also, I think we also talked about, you know, suicidality, you know, you tend to have, you know, intense suicidal ideas. Some people even have the intention and plans to, you know, so it's a very troubling period in your life.
Definitely.
You know, it's hard to mobilize yourself to get out of that space, and we'll share on how we were able to cope, and especially in the pandemic, you know, where everything, you know, was in lockdown, so it was not easy to access. Usually mental health services are not easy to access in normal circumstances, but under the pandemic that was more apparent than usual. Yes.
Just going back to the symptoms that you've mentioned, for me, I've always found it weird how, you know, how they mentioned that you have lack of sleep, and, you know, or maybe you wake up in the middle of the night. So you have that disturbance in your sleep.
Yes.
But for me, I sleep more.
Oh yeah.
You know, like, I sleep more, like I will snooze and snooze. You know, like
Well, for most people, as you say, it varies. Some people also like have increase in appetite or a decrease in appetite. So it varies as from person to person. So not necessarily you won't sleep. Others sleep more, others sleep less. You know, from your normal, you know, way of doing things. You know, it should be a deviation from that. So I totally understand.
Yeah. And it also impacts your sex drive.
Yeah.
Some people will have more libido, while some will have less.
Usually it's lower libido.
For most people.
Yes, but there are some people who have more.
All right. And then just going on to coping mechanisms now. So, I mean, some coping mechanisms are healthy and some are not so much.
Yeah, true.
So, but I mean, we really encourage for people to take on healthy coping mechanisms. Because the unhealthy ones, as much as it may seem like it numbs the pain for you at the moment, but in the long run, you do have to deal with it. You know, it does come back to you. And some of those can be like maybe alcohol abuse. You know, some people go to alcohol to cope. And they think that it helps them. They think that they're able to escape the pain at that time. But really they're not dealing with the core of the problem. So it definitely does come back when you do that. And other people will use drugs. You know, it's all under the substance abuse. It's all under substance abuse. And some people will take on more healthier coping mechanisms. They'll go to their support systems. You know, they'll go to family and friends. They'll tell them, you know, what's going on. And I've found that for me, when I'm able to take on those healthy coping mechanisms, that's when I really involve my family. You know, I will tell my mother, you know, that this is what I'm going through. I will tell my partner that this is what I'm going through. And it really goes a long way in terms of having support and not feeling so alone. You know, because a lot of the time when you're depressed, it does tend to feel lonely. You feel like you're on your own. And for me, my depressive episodes, they seem to they come and they go. You know, and for some people they will undergo a depressive episode, they will go on medication. They will either go on medication or they'll go to therapy, and then they'll recover. And that's it, they're done. You know, they don't experience depression again. But for me personally, what happens is that the depressive episodes, they come back, yearly.
Yeah.
But what I've noticed, just by observing myself, is that they tend to get less and less intense.
Yeah.
And I think it comes from being able to take on safe self-regulatory, behaviors.
Yeah.
So there are certain things that I've learned which I know help me to cope.
Yeah.
And such things are like yoga, meditation, journaling. I've always loved journaling.
Yeah.
I journal a lot. And also exercise. I mean, exercise goes such a long way in terms of giving you that natural balance, in terms of your chemical...
your feel-good hormones.
Yeah, in terms of your... Yeah.
Feel-good hormones, yeah.
Yes. So, I mean, exercise really, really helps. It's like your natural antidepressant.
Yeah,
so I go to those things, and that's when I'm taking on my healthy coping mechanisms.
Yes.
And what makes it difficult with the nature of the depression that I go through is that sometimes you feel like now this thing is not going away.
Yeah.
So it's coming
so
back,
chronic.
every year now. I have to tell my loved ones again that I'm going through this.
Yeah.
And sometimes you feel like you don't feel so comfortable to share anymore.
Yeah.
Because it's like this thing is ongoing.
Yeah.
I mean, you work so hard to try and deal with it.
Yeah.
But it keeps coming back.
Yeah.
And I think that's when the unhealthy coping mechanisms come.
Yeah.
Because then I start to withdraw, then I start to not really be able to give off my best self, in terms of my my responsibilities.
Yes.
So then I fall short, but really I don't have to do that. If I were to use the support system, then I wouldn't feel so alone. Maybe I would have help even with the things that I'm struggling with. And sometimes you find that generally people just, maybe they'll understand that those first few weeks or so after you've said that you're going through it. But then I think maybe after you've shared, they kind of expect you to get better.
Yes.
They kind of expect you to quickly get better and go back to your life.
Yeah.
But the thing about depression is that it doesn't work that way.
True.
It literally doesn't work that way.
Yeah.
You can get better.
Yeah.
But sometimes you can get worse.
True.
Sometimes you can get worse from there.
Yeah.
And you feel like your loved ones are losing patience with you.
Yeah.
And that can become a very painful experience.
Yeah, true.
And I mean, we're still going to talk about the availability of
mental health services.
Yeah, the ability of care, in terms of mental health services.
Yeah.
But I mean, just using your available resources like your loved ones, your support systems that are available to you. Sometimes you do have those challenges.
Yeah.
And when those facilities of care are not available, or those resources of care are not available, it makes it even more difficult.
True.
Because let's face it, therapy is expensive.
It is.
And if you're going through private practice to get your therapy, then it really is expensive. If you don't have medical aid, you struggle.
Yeah.
And I think also there's a gap in knowledge in terms of what facilities are available in terms of governmental, mental health institutions or just clinics that have these sort of services. There's a lack of knowledge in terms of that. And even for the ones that are available and about, there will be challenges with that. Sometimes there's that discontinuity when they have to change the therapists.
Yes.
You know, they go through that rotation.
Yes. Roster.
You know?
Yes.
So, I mean, those are things you can't run away from.
Yes, yes.
So you get used to this, maybe it's a psychiatrist that you're seeing at that time, and you go back next week and it's a different one.
Yeah.
Now you have to start again.
Yeah.
You have to explain yourself again.
Building rapport.
You have to try and build rapport, which, you know, becomes a challenge.
True.
You know?
Yeah, no, and I think you mentioned something very important, you know, in terms of, you know, how we access care. And I think we have mentioned slightly, as you said, that for most of us, you know, if you don't have medical aid, it's very hard for you to get adequate care for your own depression. And I think for me, because I think I had medical aid, you know, even university and all that. And I think I was in the know-how, you know, Uti, I was part of the mental health profession, you know, in training and also, so it was easier for me to access that. But then because of my own internalized stigma and pill shaming, it was hard for me to initiate the contact with the mental health provider, because even though I would see that, okay, now I'm suicidal, I'm starting to self-cut, which is one of the, you know, maladaptive, unhelpful and unhealthy coping behaviors. Still, it was hard for me to say, okay, you know what, I need to see a therapist right now. I need to get medication, because one of the things about these common disorders like depression is that they do, you know, changes in your brain. They result in changes in your brain that need to be corrected by medication. And sometimes it's hard for us to take medication, because now in our communities, then it's like, you know, you'll be crazy. Yes, there's a stigma involved with that. So I internalized that stigma. I call it pill and therapy shaming, where I felt like as a budding mental health practitioner, I should have my house in order, right? And I shouldn't be, you know, falling apart. And depression is more than falling apart. Is that you have coped for so long that, you know, you carried so much for so long that, you know, now your body says rest, right? You know, reset, you know. So I think for me, there was that, you know, that even though I had the access and the financial means to access those, which were very helpful, by the way, and like when I did initiate contact with the help of a support network, I started taking antidepressants for 6 months, and then went on, successfully recovered, but also because I have a relapsing course, as you are. So every year I know that, you know, sometimes due to seasonal changes, due to triggers, like, you know, the pandemic had stress triggers where, you know, that would just precipitate a depressive episode. So it's really hard, you know, but, you know, there are facilities, as Nokona said, you know, that do offer, you know, mental health services, but people do not know about that, you know, and it's hard. It comes with its own challenges, of course, due to how the health system is, you know, structured and all that. But it's quite hard, you know.
So we'll be sharing that information with you guys. We'll provide a list of all the mental health clinics or clinics that provide mental health services that are within reach for our community in KZN.
Yes, especially in the Sunduzi area.
And even the stats that we shared at the beginning will also provide a more detailed overview for you to look at.
I think we can also talk about, you know, you showed about, you know, the attitudes to care, you know, seeking care, you know, we talked about stigma.
We mentioned stigma, and, you know, I think that people really struggle with accepting mental health.
Yes.
You know, people really struggle with being able to understand, you know, the people who go through these challenges.
True.
And it's really worrying, you know. I mean, you just looking at the suicide rates.
Yes.
You know, a lot of people end up dying from depression. And the sad thing is that society doesn't realize that depression is an illness. When you're depressed, you're sick.
Yes.
Like, you're literally sick.
Yeah.
You you may not be physically sick, but you are not yourself.
True.
You are not yourself.
Yeah.
You are not in your right mind. You are not in your right state of mind.
Yeah.
And whatever you do in that state of mind is not something that you would normally do in your normal state of mind.
Yes.
So people are quick to judge.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, I'm not condoning suicide.
Yeah.
And I'm all for much better ways, of dealing with depression. And I strive for those.
Yeah.
But I think that as a society, we need to learn to understand.
Yeah.
We need to learn to be kinder.
Yeah.
We need to learn to put ourselves in the shoes of the people who go through mental health, you know, mental illness, or mental health challenges.
Yes.
And it's such a gap.
Yeah.
It's such a gap, especially within our African community.
True.
You know, people just don't understand.
Yeah.
They just don't get it.
Yeah.
They're quick to say when somebody commits suicide, they're quick to judge and say they're selfish.
Yeah, or they're weak.
They're weak.
Yeah.
They could have sought better ways of dealing with this.
Yeah.
They didn't have to kill themselves.
Yeah.
You know? And I think it also comes at a dishonesty with ourselves, because I think generally we all go through difficult times.
Yes.
You know, generally we all go through times where we feel like we're overwhelmed and we're not our normal selves.
Yes.
And just because, for example, you've been able to deal with that, and you've learned ways of coping, it doesn't mean now that you should expect everyone that you come across to have learned those same coping mechanisms. People will go through their own motions, they'll go through their own lessons in life. Everybody's journey is different.
True.
So really I want to advocate for people to really try and understand, to really try and take time to educate themselves on mental health, to really understand what is going on in the brain of that person, because nobody in their right mind will decide to kill themselves. Nobody in their right mind will decide to leave their family, to live their life. They have goals, while they are alive, they have particular goals that they've set for themselves, know. And also I think as a society we fall short of looking at the positives when these negatives start to happen. We overlook all the good that the person has been, and we now just focus on this problem, and then we use it to define them as a whole. And that's a problem. You can't do that. I think that we really need to find to develop that awareness, and to really look at a person more holistically, and not just focus on the problem, because we're also not helping in any way.
True.
The moment you react negatively to that particular individual who's going through these mental health challenges, or who has gotten to a point that they've actually decided to commit suicide, and you don't know in that moment when you share that, who in your circle may be undergoing that same problem, and then they take it from you that this is how you feel, and they're never going to come to you when they have a problem, because now they've shown how judgmental you are towards this.
True.
And I think we really need to learn to understand, because if you understand, you would not judge. You would not judge at all.
That's very true. No, and you spoke about something that's very important, and I think it's also a call of action for most of community initiatives to promote awareness and mental health literacy. The knowledge and the attitudes that could also shape and try to destigmatize mental health, because eventually, like, well-adjusted individuals have that liberty, you know, to just say and poke judgments, as you say, which you were not, why can't you use, you know, coping mechanisms? But then we forgot that depression is different for everyone, you know. Some people can have a low mood but still cope, you know, and be high functioning, you know. And for others, because of how depression affects their brain, would just slip into a very dark despair and hopelessness, where you do not even think about recovery. You want recovery, but it seems so impossible for you. Here mentioned something very important in terms of coping and building resilience, you know, just that, you know, even if you do go through like subsequent episodes, you're able to cope and still function despite persisting symptoms and psychosocial challenges. And she mentioned active self-care like yoga and meditation, you know, and seeking support. And what are the self-regulatory mechanisms you saw as helpful in dealing with your...
So I think really the important thing to remember is that our journeys are not linear, you know, but instead they actually spiral. And so we keep undergoing the same problem unless we give ourselves the time to really sit down with ourselves and really try to tap into what the problem or what the core of the problem is, you know. And if we don't deal with the issues that we face, they sit in our unconscious and they find ways of expression, you know. So you find that you will keep undergoing the same problem over and over and over again.
True.
You know, so I mean that's where awareness comes in.
True.
You know, so you need to have that self-awareness. You need to do the work. You need to take it upon yourself to say, okay, I've been going through this like over and over again. You know, what can I do to feel better? You know, what can I do to overcome this challenge? You know, and that's where the active self-care comes in as well. You know, and not just active self-care, but also self-compassion.
Yes.
You know, because sometimes we're the ones who are too harsh on ourselves. And by doing that, we really don't do ourselves any good. You know, instead we let the problems to really build up instead of be able to get better. So it's important to get intimate with ourselves, you know, have that self-awareness, really start to look at what things really help us in terms of not just coping, but also just things that help us as human beings to feel well. You know, in terms of having well-being. You know, so you need to be in touch with that for yourself. You need to know what makes Nokolo tick, what makes Nabisa tick. You know, and the more we do that, then the more we're able to draw from these resources when the challenges come. You know, so that's where the active self-care comes in. And self-care is different for everyone. You know, I mean, it's a word that we throw around so much nowadays that I feel that sometimes people tend to like romanticize it without really getting to the core of understanding what it really is. You know, I mean, it's a lot. Yes, it has to do with your physical care. You know? But I mean, it's about more than just spa treats and bubble baths and stuff. You know, it's also about getting in touch with yourself, your inner self. You know, getting in touch with your spirituality. You know, getting in touch with your emotions. And how to deal with those. So.
That's very true, because as you said, you know, we're different people and we cope differently. And I was just wanted to, you know, comment on what you said, that, you know, our journeys are not linear but spiral, you know. And some of the things, you know, I think we talked briefly about taking medication, for the symptoms that you might have for depression, because sometimes really it's about correcting your neurochemistry and your biology. So I think one of the other things is just, as you said, self-compassion, being okay with taking pills. It doesn't mean you are weak, doesn't mean you are defective or some way. It just means that you need that extra help, to correct your brain so that you can function optimally, in every responsibility that you have. And I think one of the things that we're also trying to do is to try to destigmatize, taking pills, because they're really helping you in, lowering your, the severity of your symptoms, or even, just really making sure that you recover successfully from each episode. Because what happens with the chronic, course, where you keep on getting sick and sick, it's sometimes because you didn't finish the medication, because of the symptoms. Sometimes you have the side effects sometimes become so severe that you cannot really stomach, taking the whole course throughout the duration or that it was prescribed for. And I really want to emphasize that, because these have certain neurobiological functions, then if you stop them abruptly, the subsequent episode becomes more severe and relapse becomes more frequent, And I think we had challenges with our own medications, sometimes the dosage is not right. Sometimes I think you would mention about, accessing care in to a GP, which we feel sometimes is not a safe space, for our own psychiatric symptoms and narratives per se, So I think that's one thing that I wanted to emphasize throughout that, and the self-harming behaviors, that comes to fore when you, as you said, you don't want to take into account your inner self, and the toxic behaviors, because we have certain behaviors that maintain our symptoms, like, avoidance. You talked about avoiding the actual issue, the core, cause. And I think sometimes these numbing activities that we use, like, watching reality TV the whole time and taking drugs and all that, they would work for now, but over time, they're not that adaptive or helpful, So I think, some people do cut.
And I think that's how then you allow yourself to keep going in a spiral.
Yes.
Because you're not dealing with the problem at its core.
Yeah.
That's when it becomes spiral. Then it keeps repeating itself.
Yeah.
But if you really deal with the problem, then you're able to cope. But I mean, it takes courage. It's not easy to admit our weaknesses. It's not easy to get intimate with ourselves on that level. Because we expose ourselves to ourselves when we do that. And some of us are just not ready for that kind of
revelation.
It takes readiness. But it's nonetheless important.
No, I think that is very important. And also in terms of therapy, we understand that sometimes even in African communities, the understanding of the helpfulness of therapy is sometimes looked down upon, because what talking can do, but it really helps, because most of the things, as Unokono said, if you don't understand the core of why you're going through this every time, it will be hard for you to recover fully. And I think one of the things that I always say therapy really helps with is getting in touch with yourself, as you said.
Absolutely.
Unpacking the traumas or anything that is underlying there, that could be contributing to this spiraling that keeps on going. And I think just to that therapy is really helpful in that regard also. And just to add on to that, for me, I've found that therapy has been more helpful than medication. True.
And I mean, there are lots of dynamics involved when it comes to medication. So it could be a lot of factors involved. But for me, I've found that when I go to therapy, that's when I'm really able to get well. And it helps to have that continuity. When you're able to see one therapist for your entire period of your therapy, unlike having to change between therapists.
Yeah.
But I mean, we work with what we have, you know.
True.
Because with government, they do have those allocations where they now have to rotate the doctors.
Yes.
The doctors have to rotate, so you don't really get that continuity sometimes, you know, for some people.
Yeah.
But it doesn't. I'm not discouraging it.
Yeah.
You know, it doesn't take away the usefulness of going for therapy.
Yeah.
You know, I think you can just. It's really about working with what you have.
Yes.
You can overlook those minor disturbances in there, and just tell yourself that, or remind yourself why you're going to therapy in the first place. And be able to embrace it the way that it comes.
No, I think that was very helpful, especially in terms of Uti, you know, in government institutions. Even the referral pathway is very difficult to navigate, because we find that even in clinics, even though they do offer, you know, basic screening for depression or anxiety or even suicidality, but you know, as you said, they're revolving rotations of doctors and also psychologists are only available at CHC level, community health center level. So sometimes it's hard to access therapy. You know, we have counselors now who have come to fill in the gap, but not every clinic has the counselors. You know. So I think, working with what you have, and also just really, I think because most of the time it's also just being open also about the severity of your experience. You know, how severe are your symptoms? When you feel like you know that, you know, now, I think therapy would do, you know, and sometimes in combination with medication, because, you know, when they're too severe that you start even hearing voices, it starts affecting, you know, your physical self. You're having pain and, retardation, you know. So then that's when, you know, you realize, okay, no, now medication, I also need medication. Well, I think also being open and transparent about that with any mental health service professional could go very far in helping you, linking you with the right kind of help, you know.
And I think I would also like to stress just taking on therapy more as more of a habit, as more of a habit of well-being, or sort of like being able to access well-being, or to be able to just actively help yourself to be well. So I mean, therapy is not just about you going there when you feel suicidal or you're going through like the most. You know, you can go to therapy when you feel fine. And it'll help you when you get to that point. Because now you're more in touch with yourself. Because you've been talking about yourself in therapy, and not just in general conversation, but with an expert on, you know, who can help you navigate around all the different challenges that you may go through, or all the different traumas that may be hidden from you, because that's what psychologists do. They help you tap into your unconscious, you know, and that really helps to it really just helps you to get to know yourself and to really be able to cope in the future when challenges come. And I think, as Blume said, that's something that we really stand for. But our approach, we use Indigenous Resilience. And with Indigenous Resilience, it's about, we want to stress that people are able to know themselves, and, you know, at that deep level, you know, in such a way that and this will help them to build coping, and it will help them to once you get to know yourself, you're able to deal with a lot of issues. You know, you're able to deal with a lot of adversities that may come in the future. And Indigenous Resilience is exactly about that. You know, it's about getting in touch with yourself. It's about getting in touch with yourself at your very core. You know, looking at your environment, not just looking at yourself as an individual, but also with relation to your environment, in relation to the people around you. So it's a more socio-ecological approach, which helps you to really be able to center yourself, so that you're able to deal with a lot of challenges. And it also touches on your spirituality, and those are very, very important modalities for you to tap into when you undergo challenges.
Especially
even mental health challenges.
No, I think that was very helpful, especially you talked about how, we can use psychotherapy as a way of understanding yourself and getting to know yourself better. Because I always say that you don't need to hit rock bottom, to access care, You sometimes you also go to therapy just, to consolidate your career goals, to develop yourself personally as a person, to redirect your paths. And also, I think it also gives you the tools, as you said, it teaches you the tools, the coping tools, tap into your inner psychological resources to be able to cope even in the face of persisting psychosocial difficulties like the pandemic and what it had affected on in terms of, the joblessness, the unemployment crisis that has come. So I think, as you said, building that resilience, as you said, from the ground root up, from your own inner self, is what Lula says about. And I think, that is very
able to also go to the community and really get the lived experiences, in terms of how COVID-19 has impacted on the mental health of the people. And what we found was that a lot of people were impacted by the fact that their family members lost their jobs. One girl that I spoke to said that her aunt and her mom lost their job, and they ended up having to rely on a grant. I think she said it was their grandmother's grant. And it was just that they had, in terms of food security. It was coming from just that one grant, in the entire household. And it really just shows more locally, how COVID-19 has impacted people.
I think that was also, I think we're also building on the research tradition that has been focusing on understanding the lived experiences of how COVID has impacted the psychosocial wellness of especially the vulnerable groups, the young women and men in our township settings, and I think Nokolo mentioned that the most prominent was joblessness and unemployment, which was very prominent because most of the people were retrenched, and also the people that I also interviewed also cited that as one of the biggest challenges that they had encountered during this time, and losing the loved ones, being scared that you might contract or might have transmitted the thing to their elderly relatives who passed on. Joblessness was theme.
It was the most prominent one.
Yes. And I think also, there was a interesting study that was done by Global Citizen who wanted to look at the serious toll that the psychosocial impact of COVID on mental health in South Africa. And they saw that there has been an increased levels of stress and anxiety due to the stress triggers like unemployment, the strict regulations that were enforced during lockdown and even after, especially for anxiety people. Being housebound is bound to, trigger, or precipitate an anxiety attack of some sort. And there was a thermodynamic study or survey where they saw that almost 65% of adults were experiencing high levels of emotional and psychological distress than before, and usually that was due to not knowing not knowing about their jobs, job security, and also food security, and also being able to organize logistics about childcare, you know, because now we're working from home, but then the crashes are, you know, not opened due to that, you know, having to plan logistics around that was a significant amount of stress for that. And yeah,
even school-going children,
yes,
you know, they were also studying from home.
Yeah,
you know, so now you have to be in charge of the household, but you also have to be a teacher, supervising your child from home with their homework and stuff. I think a lot of parents were complaining about that.
It was super stressful, you know, juggling that and also being still competent in your job because you're still working from home for those who were still working. So that was a juggling game.
So in terms of the coping, what from the scenarios that you looked at, what sort of coping mechanisms did your participants say that they drew from?
So mostly they talked about their spirituality. They touched on how their unwavering faith in God really helped them cope and, you know, have this sense of hope that things will get better, you know, and I think that was the most prominent thing amongst my participants, that they said that prayer helped them to cope even in distressful times and uncertain situations, and that having faith in God.
Okay. There was also another case that I looked at where they mentioned that, you know, the challenge for them is that now in school they're not able to get like a full lesson, you know, like they kind of like fall short in terms of the, you know, the interaction that they get to have with their educators, you know, because there's this rotation now that they have to go this week and then another group goes that following week and so on and so forth. So they end up finding themselves maybe going to school for 2 weeks in an entire month, and that creates learning challenges, you know, for a lot of learners, and those were some of the challenges that came out, and so I mean some people are able to deal with that, you know, some people have already taught themselves to study on their own, but for some people it's a whole new different ball game, you know, and we saw families also experience a lot of failures due to that, you know. A lot of children didn't make it, you know, because they now had to adapt to a whole new way of learning that they're not used to, and it was so abrupt, you know, they were not prepared for it at all, you know, and it's really been one of the biggest challenges.
And how did they cope? Like what helped them, you know, cope with those challenges?
Okay, so the one case, she said that what really helped her was that her life really was just never easy. You know, just from a young age. So she learned to deal with adversity from a young age. So any adversity that comes is no longer new to her. You know, she's already developed coping mechanisms that have to do with adversity. So whatever adversity comes is no different from what she's experienced before. So she goes to the same you know, resources to draw strength from and be able to cope. You know, it was nothing new for her that sometimes they have to go on with no food, you know, in the home, and you know, it was quite surprising because she's actually a young person, but you know, I was really quite surprised by the amount of strength that she showed.
Mental hardness.
You know, the amount of mental hardness that she was able to display. You know, she said that, you know, as much as it was hard for her, but she felt it was even more difficult looking at the children, you know, the younger children in the home, who have no capacity to even understand what is going on. So at least her as an adult, she can grapple with, you know, what is, you know, the nature of the situation. But for a younger child, they don't have the capacity to even get it.
Yeah.
They don't understand why now I'm not able to, maybe get Denon, something small like that,
That's true.
So, but it's even deeper than that, going from being able to have your full meals, like your full breakfast, your full lunch, and your full supper, to having only one type of food, cover for all of that. And that's really difficult. And it's really something that would be new especially for a child. So it's those type of things. But with that case, it was just her mental hardness that helped her to cope. So for the next talk, we'd really just love to cover more in terms of Indigenous resilience, and really be able to get to the very core of what it means or how we want to apply it to the groups that we'll be working with.
Especially in the space of mental health, which is very bombarded with, Eurocentric way of understanding the person, the self, and your inner being, and how to cope with that, and building resilience. Because we want to say, Uti, the takeaway message of this all is that, depression is not who you are. It's the condition that you tend to have if you are a chronic relapser. And also that it's possible to recover. There is life after depression. We're able to recover and thrive and follow your passions, a wide range of passions actually, and become the best version of yourself, as long as you do the work, as you mentioned, being ready to deal and face yourself on that deeper level. And I think Indigenous, the concept of Indigenous resilience really would do us much good, because we'll be using also available resources,
we feel that it's a holistic approach in terms of being able to tackle mental health issues. And also, a lot of displacements have been suffered by our communities, especially through colonization. Colonization brought about a lot of displacements for our people in terms of culture and tradition, and all sorts of modalities that we were able to use in terms of coping. A lot of that stuff became demonized. And now being able to go back to that and really be able to build and grow, and that is what we seek with using Indigenous resilience as an approach and as a framework, which we feel is all-encompassing and really the umbrella that addresses so much more than just tackling mental health.
Thank you so much for joining us. I really hope you really enjoyed the talk and found it informative.
Absolutely, and that's where we'd like to leave it for today. And until next time, thank you guys.
Bye.
Bye.
Okay, that went.